What if you woke up tomorrow, checked your phone, and the headline said China has blockaded Taiwan? No ships in, no ships out. You'd probably think, that's terrible, but what does that have to do with me? Everything. Absolutely everything. Before we get into this, if you've never thought about how a tiny island in the Pacific could completely upend your life in London, Sydney, or Kansas City, hit that like button right now and subscribe. Because what you're about to hear is going to change how you see the world. We're not talking politics. We're talking your grocery bill, your car, your job, your phone. Let's go. Taiwan sits in the middle of the Pacific like a small chip, and that word chip is more literal than you think. This island, roughly the size of Maryland or the state of Tasmania, manufactures over 60% of the world's semiconductors. And one company, TSMC, makes over 90% of the most advanced chips on the planet. The ones inside your iPhone, your laptop, your car, your hospital's MRI machine, your bank's servers. Now imagine China, which has claimed Taiwan as its own territory for decades, decides tomorrow that it's done waiting. It doesn't invade. Not yet. It just blockades. A naval and air cordon. Nothing gets in. Nothing gets out. You'd assume that's a military problem, a government problem, a problem for diplomats in suits to argue about. No. Within 72 hours, you'd start feeling it. The first thing that happens isn't bombs. It's panic. Stock markets in New York, London, Tokyo, Sydney, they don't wait for a resolution. They price in the worst case immediately. We've seen this playbook before. COVID hit, and within days, supply chains that nobody even knew existed suddenly collapsed. Toilet paper, medications, car parts. A Taiwan blockade would be 10 times that. Markets would tank overnight. Your pension, your 401k, your ISA, your superannuation, that value doesn't just sit there. It reacts to the world. And the world just changed. Tech stocks would be the first to fall off a cliff. Apple, Nvidia, AMD, Qualcomm, every company that depends on Taiwanese chips. And here's the brutal truth. That's almost every company. Cars have chips. Fridges have chips. Medical devices have chips. Defense systems have chips. There is no sector of the modern economy that isn't downstream of Taiwan. Remember 2021? COVID triggered a chip shortage and suddenly you couldn't buy a PlayStation 5. Car dealerships had empty lots because Ford and GM couldn't source enough semiconductors to finish their vehicles. People were paying above sticker price for used cars because new ones simply didn't exist. That shortage came from a temporary disruption in production. A Taiwan blockade wouldn't slow production down. It would stop it. Completely. TSMC's fabs don't just disappear. But the finished chips sitting in warehouses, the ones loaded onto cargo ships ready to go to Apple and Samsung and everyone else? Frozen. Gone. Inaccessible. Within months, not years, months, the ripple effect would be catastrophic. Car production grinds to a halt. New phone releases? Delayed indefinitely. Laptops and servers? Backlogged so badly that companies start rationing. And when supply drops like a stone and demand doesn't budge, prices climb. Not a little. Not 1% or 2%. We're talking the kind of inflation that makes 2022 look like a minor inconvenience. Your cost of living in America, the UK, Australia, anywhere in the developed world goes up. Hard. Fast. Now here's where it gets personal, and I mean kitchen table personal. The moment a blockade is confirmed, oil markets go haywire. The Taiwan Strait is one of the busiest shipping lanes on the planet. Roughly half of the world's container ship traffic passes through that corridor every single year. Insurance companies immediately hike rates for any vessel operating in the region. Shipping companies reroute. Some refuse to sail at all. Longer routes mean more fuel burned. More fuel burned means higher shipping costs. Higher shipping costs mean everything that arrives in a port, whether it's Sydney, Southampton, or San Francisco, costs more to get there. And guess who absorbs that cost at the end of the chain? You do. At the checkout. Groceries, electronics, clothing, furniture, anything that moves by sea, which is roughly 80% of global trade, gets more expensive. And it doesn't creep up slowly. It jumps. Because the moment uncertainty hits, businesses don't wait to see how things play out. They raise prices to protect their margins immediately, sometimes before the shipping costs even catch up. We saw a version of this when Russia invaded Ukraine. Wheat prices spiked globally within days. People in Egypt, Lebanon, and East Africa felt it within weeks. Now imagine that same panic, but applied to semiconductors, shipping lanes, and energy markets all at once. That's not a recession. That's a restructuring of the entire global economy. Here's something most people don't think about. When a crisis like this hits, governments don't just watch. They act. And government action in a crisis often has consequences that outlast the crisis itself. Emergency defense spending goes up fast. In the US, UK, and Australia, military budgets would expand almost overnight. That money comes from somewhere. Budgets get reshuffled. Social programs get squeezed. Interest rates, already a pressure point for anyone with a mortgage, could swing unpredictably depending on how central banks respond to the inflationary shock. If you own a home with a variable rate mortgage in the UK or Australia, you'd feel that. If you're renting and your landlord has a mortgage, you'd feel that too, just slightly delayed. Governments might also impose emergency controls, export restrictions on key materials, priority allocations for defense industries over consumer goods. It sounds extreme. It's not. The US did exactly this with chip exports to China in 2022 and 2023, and it reshaped entire industries. A blockade would make those measures look gentle. Here's what makes this scenario truly unsettling. A blockade isn't an endpoint. It's a pressure campaign. And pressure campaigns either get resolved diplomatically or they escalate. If the US Navy moves to break the blockade, and China holds its position, you're no longer talking about an economic disruption. You're talking about the possibility of the largest military confrontation since World War II, between nuclear-armed powers. Most experts don't think it gets there. Most experts also didn't think a lot of things that happened anyway. The point isn't to scare you. The point is this. The world is more connected than most of us realize on a Monday morning when we're just trying to get through the week. That island, smaller than Tasmania, smaller than Maryland, holds a thread that runs through almost every device, every market, every supply chain that makes modern life work. Pulling that thread doesn't just affect Taiwan. It affects everything. So the next time you hear Taiwan mentioned in a headline and your brain starts to scroll past it, stop. Because now you know it's not just geopolitics. It's personal. If this opened your eyes, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop your thoughts in the comments. I genuinely want to know. Do you think the West is prepared for this? And if you're not subscribed yet, now's the time. This is exactly the kind of content we break down here. The stuff that actually matters to your everyday life, explained without the noise. I'll see you in the next one.